Hey guys, this is Lori with LM's Crafty Creations, and I am here to share a tutorial with you guys that y'all have been waiting on for quite some time. This is my, a lot of you know it as my Photoplay About a Little Boy 8x8 album. It's a baby boy album that I had done, and I don't have it anymore to show it to you, but everyone's been asking for a tutorial on it, and Tamara sent me the glorious G45 Master Detective Collection, so I will be decorating this album with that paper. So it's going to become my Master Detective tutorial. So I just wanted to let you know if you've been waiting for that album and the tutorial on it, here it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out, and I think you're going to find this one's, whoops, pretty easy, as long as I don't lose everything that I've already pre-cut for it. So there are only 4 pages in this album because there's a lot going on the pages. So the front of the pages are all different. They each have a different feature. And then the back of the pages are all the same. So I'm just going to show you how to do the back pages one time. And it'll be the same for every page. So that'll make the video shorter. So, but I've been thinking on my original tutorial, I think I'm going to change it just slightly. And of course I'm not prepared for it. I'm going to add another flap on the front of this. Let me just cut that real quick. So, because what I plan to do with this album, whether or not it actually works or not, is I'm going to do like scrapbook layouts on this album. 7.5 by 8. I wonder how many of those that I need. Maybe just one more? Let's do one more. Sorry, I should have already had this done, but it was kind of a last minute thought that I want to do some scrapbook layouts. And I need some larger photo areas in order to do that. So I'll show you where I add those flaps. Because they weren't included in the original tutorial, and so if you don't want to add them, you don't have to. So the first page, let's talk about the base page, which I've already, that's my pocket. Base pages. You're going to need to cut 4 pieces at 7.5 inches by 12 inches. And then you're going to score on the 12-inch side at 7.5. So, and then you're going to fold this piece over like this, and this will be the back of the page. And this is your front right here. Okay? You're going to want to make 4 of those. So, on this first page, in the original tutorial, I had a pocket here and then 2 flaps. And I'm going to do that, but first I'm going to add another larger flap first, which was not included in the original tutorial, and that is what this piece is for. Not tutorial. I didn't do a tutorial on this yet. In the original album. I don't know what I'm saying. So, for these larger flaps, they're optional if you want to include them. I'm only going to do them in 2 places, so I'm only adding 2 flaps from the original one that I created. These measure 7.5 inches by 8 inches. You're going to score on the 8-inch side at 1/2 inch. And just fold on your score line and burnish. And we're going to take our glue. Whoops. And I'm going to add this flap on the left-hand side of the first base page. So it's just going to be a full page flap. I I don't even know if I'm going to add any magnets to it or not. It just may be just an open flap. So when you open it up, it looks like this, and you turn it over, you have your other base page flap here. Okay, now on this flap, I'm going to add the pocket that I did in the original one. Should be somewhere. I think it's this one. Yes. So this pocket measures 5 inches by 8.5 inches. You're going to score on the 5-inch side at 1/2 inch and on the 8.5 inch side at 1/2 inch on each end. And then you're going to miter your corners. And then fold on your score lines and burnish. And I'm going to add this right at the bottom of the base page. And I'm just going to kind of burnish down my glue here. Okay. And then I'm going to add the flap. The first flap is a 4 3/4 inch by 6 1/4 inch flap. I'm going to fold on my score line. You're going to score it at 1/2 inch on the 4 3/4 inch side. And I'm going to put my glue on the inside of the flap here, and I'm going to tuck it on the inside of this pocket. And I'm going to line it up right there in the middle as much as I can get it. As even as you can get it. So you will have to do more than likely some kind of closure on this flap, so maybe a magnet here and then a magnet on this other flap that's going to be on top. This flap measures 4 3/4 by 4 1/4. Score on the 4 3/4 inch side at 1/2 inch. Fold on your score line and burnish. You're going to add that right to the top of this flap that we just put down. Let me add my glue. And I'm going to turn mine upside down because it's easier for me to line it up that way and get it even. So you want to center it on that flap. And just press it down. So what we've done here, super easy. We have a 4x4 or a flap that will hold a 4x4 photo, and then a flap that will hold 2 4x6 photos, and then you could put another 4x6 right there. Okay, and then this will open up so you have 2 large spaces for photos here, and then you flip it over, another large space where you could do a layout. On this little flap, we're going to do an acetate pocket. So I've already cut mine, and it looks like this. And I got this acetate. Now acetate, some of you know it better as transparency film, so yours may be completely clear, and mine in my previous album was clear, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter. I like to use the decorative kind sometimes, so that's what I'm doing here. And I've scored it already. It would be nice to have measurements, wouldn't it? Acetate pockets. So you're going to want to cut 4 of these. Now I cut 2 in acetate. They're going to go right here. And I cut 2 in just black cardstock. So I'm going to have 2 acetate pockets and 2 cardstock. You could do them all in acetate if that's what you want. These are 4 1/2 inches by 8 1/2 inches. you're going to score on the 4.5-inch side at 1/2 inch, and then on the 8.5-inch side at 1/2 inch on each end. It is a little trickier to score, and so you have to be careful with when you're folding it. Now I noticed when I scored and then I folded on my score lines and burnished, my pocket was a little off. It was a little too big up here and down here. And I just had to take it and kind of roll it in a bit and really burnish it well again. So it's not, it's tricky sometimes because it's so slippery and it slips a lot. Now I don't glue this down because it's so slick. I mean, you could probably use glossy accents or something, but I just use score tape for my acetate pockets. So that's what I'm going to do right here, is add my score tape because I've already scored it and burnished it. And then you're going to miter on your corners as well, so don't forget to do that. It's just like a regular pocket. Okay, and I use 3/8 of an inch score tape. If all you have is 1/4 inch, then that's fine. And I'm just going to kind of cut right here. I'd already mitered my corners, so there's this little space here where there's tape but no acetate, so just got to trim it up a little bit. Be better if you added the tape before you folded for this particular one. So this acetate, the black stripes, it came from a paper pad that I usually buy from either Amazon.com or Hobby Lobby, and I will try to remember to link you down below. If I forget, then just leave me a comment and say, don't forget to link for the acetate. It's a paper pad. I've got glue on this. Well, it's a pad with just acetate in it, and it's got decorative ones, and that's what I like to use. So I'm going to go ahead and add this pocket after all of that chit chat. Oops. And I'm just going to add it. Make sure you stay away from, I'm going to move it this way because this is easier for me. Stay away from the fold of your paper and stick it down. Make sure you try to get it as even as you can. And then you're just going to want to burnish it really well. Make sure that tape really sticks. Now let me get my corner rounder. I'm going to go ahead and add the flap. So the closure on this little envelope is going to go right here. And these measure 2.5 inches by 7.5 inches. You're going to score on the 2.5 inch side at 1/2 inch. And I'm going to go ahead and miter, round my corners because I like the flaps to have rounded corners. And I'm going to add my glue. And I'm going to stick it in on the bottom back behind this flap. And there's my closure. Okay. So to keep this closed, what I do is I do a strip of paper, and let's say do it, I don't know, a couple of inches. Don't I have a scrap here I could show you guys with? And I usually do this with pattern paper. I don't know, I'm going to do mine at 2.5 inches by something. Let's say 4. And I'm going to score in the middle at 2 inches. So what did I say? 2.5 inches by 4 and score in the middle at 2. This may be too big. I don't know. We'll see. So I fold this piece of paper and burnish, and it's going to be stuck right here. Now I don't want it to show, so I want to make sure when my flap closes it doesn't show, which it does here. So I'm going to have to trim about, what do you say, 1/2 inch off each side. So what did I do it at? 4 inches. So hold on, I'll give you the new measurements. 3 inches by 2.5, and then score in the middle at 1.5 inches. So what I'll do is I'll place my magnet right here. And don't I have one handy? So these are rather large magnets, but I'm going to use them anyway. So I'm going to take my score tape. I like to just tear a piece off, stick it on my magnet, just like that. Then I'm going to stick it down in the middle of this. Whoops. And actually, I'm just going to fold it that way. So I'm going to add score tape to this piece all the way around, because this is going to go on the acetate. And again, this is 3/8 of an inch score tape. I always get the question, what am I using to tear my tape with? It's called the Perfect Trim Ruler. If you Google it, it will come up. Or you can go to perfecttrimruler.com. So, what am I doing? I don't know. Needs to go on the inside of this. Need to get my head on straight today. Inside, burnish. So I'm going to tear my tape off. Whoops. And I'm going to stick this in the middle on the inside. Oh, my other magnet already stuck to it. It doesn't have to be lined up perfectly, as much as you can get it. So I'm sticking this down. I didn't go over the score line. And then I'm going to fold it over. Well, darn. Ugh. You got to make sure it covers all the way from front to back. There it is. Mine's still sticking out a bit. Oh well, I'm over it. I'll have to fix that later. See how it's still sticking out a bit? You can see it. That doesn't normally happen. Then this magnet, you will, so obviously it's already stuck there. So I'm going to take my piece of tape, add it to the top of here, close the flap so it sticks to the flap, and then I'm going to put a piece of tape over this. And there's my magnet closure. Okay, of course I'm going to mat this with pattern paper. So there we go. There's our acetate pocket. Now I'm going to flip this over. Right here, we're going to do our binding pocket. So this part, the acetate pocket, the flap, the binding pocket, and the two flaps that are going to attach to this is all the same for every page. So I'm only going to go through this one time for time's sake. Let's see. So for your binding pocket, which is going to be right here, you need to cut a piece at 4.5 inches. Is it 4.5? Yeah, 4.5 inches by 8.5 inches. Score on the 8.5 inch side at 1/2 inch on each end. Fold on your score lines and burnish. And then you're just going to add your glue. I'm going to go ahead and add it on both ends. And I'm going to stick it down to this flap here. And for some reason, mine is just slightly shorter than it should be, which I'm not really worried about. I've noticed that the Paper Accents cardstock I use is 12 by like 11 and like just a hair smaller. And it didn't ever bother me until just recently. So sometimes when I cut it, it's just that teeny tiny bit shorter. But it's fine. So here's our binding pocket. I don't want to pull on it too much since I just stuck it down. Now, you're going to have two flaps on the binding pocket for every page. So you're going to want to cut 8 of these flaps at 5 inches by 7 inches. You're going to score on the 7-inch side at 1/2 inch. So we're going to stick this flap right here in the binding pocket. So you're going to put the glue on the inside of the flap. So the first one we're going to stick on the inside right up to the score line at the very top of the binding pocket. And then I'm going to fold mine over and just kind of burnish it. So you're going to have 2 of these per page. So I'm going to take the second one, fold on my score line and burnish. And I'm going to add glue on the outside of the hinge this time. And I'm going to put this one on the top of the binding pocket at the very bottom. Just make sure it's completely lined up. Okay, so there are pockets on these flaps. So the pockets, you're going to want to cut 8 of these as well. These are cut at 3 3/4 by 6 inches. You're going to score on the 3 3/4 inch side at 1/2 inch, and then on the 6-inch side at 1/2 inch on each end. You're going to want to miter your corners. And then fold on your score lines and burnish. And I'm going to add the first one to the flap that we just added, the bottom flap. And I'm going to stick it just right above the score line. You don't want your pocket to interfere with the fold of the flap. That's why you try not to go over the score line. I'm just going to burnish that pretty well. So there's my pocket. So when you fold this flap over, you have a nice space for a 4x6 photo here. If you choose, you could put another pocket on the other side if you want. These pockets will hold 4 4x6 photos. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the second pocket cut at the same size. I'm going to miter, whoops, and fold and burnish. And like I said, this piece is the same for every page in the album. Okay, so there's our two flaps. And I always like to burnish my flaps after I'm done. So page 1 has a flap, then a flap on top of a large pocket, and then on this page I added the large flap, another large space here, your acetate pocket, and then you could put a photo here, and then you have the two flaps, and that's it for page 1. So let's move along to page 2. So again, I've already done the back of mine, and for this one I didn't use acetate. I used cardstock to make this pocket right here. So this is what it looks like with cardstock. So you can choose to do that or do acetate throughout, and then here's my two flaps. So all that's already done. I'm just going to stick my paper clip here for now. So on the front of page 2, we're going to do kind of an undercut flap, and this flap measures 7 inches by 7.5 inches. You're going to score, drop my scissors, on the 7-inch side at 1/2 inch, and then fold on your score line and burnish, and then add your flap on the right hand side of the page. And it should line up top to bottom, but it won't go all the way to the end of the base page. I made this one just slightly shorter. Okay, and on top of this flap, we're going to add a pocket and two smaller flaps. So let's do the smaller flaps first. These measure 4 3/4 by 6 1/4. Score on the 4 3/4 inch side at 1/2 inch, and fold on your score lines and burnish. And we're going to add these flaps. I'm going to turn my page around so I can do this evenly. We're going to add them in the middle. The first one we're going to add in the middle on the right hand side, left hand side of the base page. So here is our base page. I'm flipping it around, and I'm going to add it right here. And I'm just going to try to line it up in the middle as much as possible. Okay. Now if you're really meticulous, you can measure all these, but I don't like to do that. And then I'm going to add the other flap. I'm actually going to put the glue on the inside of the hinge. And I'm going to line it up with this one that I just put down, and I'm going to tuck it under this larger flap and glue it down. So now my flap should be even. Let's see, I've glued this flap on this side of the other flap. So now we're going to open up both of these and go ahead and add our pocket. Now the pocket is cut to 3.5 inches by 7.5 inches. Score on the 3.5-inch side at 1/2 inch, and on the 7.5-inch side at 1/2 inch on each end. Then I'm going to miter. And then fold on my score lines and burnish. And I'm going to add this at the bottom of this flap. It should just fit perfectly on the bottom of the flap. Okay, so I did use, I'm going to fold this in and burnish it a bit because that flap, that pocket we added, so it lays flat. And then I did use a magnet to keep this closed, but you could also use a ribbon closure if you like, or a swing tab or whatever you like. And that's it for this page. So we have the 2 flaps, the pocket, this folds open this way for a large space for photos, and then again another space, and then here's our either cardstock or acetate envelope, and then the 2 flaps. Okay, so let's move on to page 3. For this one, I don't remember. What did I do for this one? I did a pocket. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. So this is the one where I'm going to go ahead and add the other large full page flap. And like I said, in the original album that I created, I didn't add this. But I'm going to add it here. So again, this flap is 7.5 inches by 8 inches. Score on the 8-inch side at 1/2 inch. Fold on your score line and burnish. And I'm going to add this on the left-hand side of the base page. Okay, so here is our full page flap. Now to this flap, we're going to add the pocket on the bottom. So let me turn over my little measurement sheets here. So you're going to cut the pocket to 5 inches by 8.5 inches, score on the 5-inch side at 1/2 inch, and then on the 8.5 inch side at 1/2 inch on each end of the paper. Miter your corners. And then fold on your score lines and burnish. And then just go ahead and add this to the very bottom of the page. You're going to add a flap to the top, just like we did before. This one is cut to the same size, 4 3/4 inches by 6 1/4. Score on the 4 3/4 inch side at 1/2 inch, and fold on your score line and burnish. I'm going to add my glue to the inside of the flap. I'm going to flip this over so I can get it more even, and I'm going to add it inside here and line it up and try to get it in the middle of the pocket. So I'm going to turn it around, burnish a little bit more, and here is my flap, and apparently I used too much glue. So then we're going to put 2 flaps on top of this one, and you're going to cut these flaps at 6 3/4 inches by 4 1/4 inches. Score on the 6 3/4 inch side at 1/2 inch. Fold on your score lines and burnish. And what I'm going to do with these 2 flaps is I'm going to place them inside each other just like this, so my hinges line up. Okay, I should have a hinge on each side inside. Line them up, hold them together just like this. Now you're going to add your glue right here, and you're going to take them and you're going to line them up on the top of this flap that you just placed. Which is tricky, keeping them lined up. And getting them straight on the flap. And I did use a magnet closure on this to keep this closed. So here's what you end up with: a flap that goes this way, and then a flap that goes this way. So you can have 3 photos here. And this folds up, you would put your magnet right here, and then this will flip up this way as well. You have room for another photo. So then we have our large flap that opens. And then again, I'm going to miter my corners on these flaps really quick. Not miter, I just keep saying that. Round my corners. All of my paper is getting stuck to my tools today. And I'll add a magnet closure to this. And then there's my other 2 flaps there. Okay? Last page, and then we'll move on to what I did for the front and back covers of the album, is, oh yeah, so it's a large flap. Let me make sure I got this the right way. I'm going to go ahead and round these corners too so I don't forget. So on the last page, on the front, because we already know what the back looks like, we're going to cut a large flap at 7 inches by 7 1/2 inches. Score on the 7 inch side at 1/2 inch. Fold on your score line and burnish. And you're going to add this flap on the left hand side of the base page. Put your glue on the outside of the hinge and stick it down right on top of it. Okay, so now you should have your flap. On this flap, we're going to add a smaller flap with a pocket. So this smaller flap is cut to 4 3/4 inches by 6 1/4 inch. Score on the 4 3/4 inch side at 1/2 inch. Fold on your score line and burnish, and then I'm going to add my glue to the outside again. Here's the flap that we just placed. I'm going to turn this to face me, and I'm going to put this flap on top of it and just line it up to the middle. So it's similar to the previous page that we did, except for this flap is going to have a side pocket. So you have this flap here. Now we're going to take our side pocket and we're going to add it to the smaller flap. So this pocket is cut to 3 inches by 7¼ inches. Score on the 3-inch side at 1/2 inch, and then on the 7¼ inch side at 1/2 inch on each end. Miter your corners, fold on your score lines, and burnish. And I'm going to add this on the side here. And I actually used a ribbon closure to keep this one closed, and it turned out really cute instead of a magnet. I like to do different closures. This pocket just lines up right there on the right hand side of the smaller flap. Okay, so you have the small flap with the pocket, a nice photo mat here, a larger area for a photo, and then 2 more larger areas. And then here I did the cardstock instead of the acetate envelope. And then I have 2 flaps here. And that's it for the pages, guys. I have already created my chipboard album for this one. So here it is. And on the tutorial, I had actually done, my glue's getting clogged. So here's my hinges. I only have 4 hinges, and instead of 1/2 inch hinges, I did 3/4 inch hinges, just because I wanted to try something different and see if it helps in the movement of the pages. So I did do that. I will provide those measurements in the comments down below as usual. I always have all my measurements down there. So here's what it looks like. This is actually a pocket right here. And then this is just a waterfall that holds 4x4 photos. Okay, so we're going to do that on this side right now so I can show you guys how I did it. Super easy. The pocket is cut to 4¾ inches by 9 inches. Score on the 4¾ inch side at 1/2 inch, and then on the 9-inch side at 1/2 inch on each end. So miter these corners, and let's go ahead and fold on our score lines and burnish, but we're not going to add it to the book yet. Well, I guess you could if you wanted to. It really doesn't matter. I didn't. I actually put my waterfall on the pocket and then added it to the book. So that's what I'm going to do now. So we have this nice base for our waterfall that's also a pocket that will attach to our chipboard cover. So you're gonna want to cut 2 of these pockets, and then each of these pockets needs 8 waterfall pieces. So you'll actually need to cut 16 of these. They are 4¾ inches by 4¼ Score on the 4¾ inch side at 1/2 inch. And you're just going to lay them down just like you would a waterfall. I'm going to fold on my score line. I'm going to add my glue. And I'm just going to glue it right there at the very top, and it should line up perfectly with the pocket. Flip that one over, and then we'll add our next one. Add glue, and then we're going to add this one right below the hinge of where this one was, and just keep going all the way down. adding. And what I did is I did a magnet closure with a cardstock flap. And I'm debating on whether or not I want to keep that or if I want to do a ribbon closure. But either way, it would look cute. I originally added this waterfall to the baby album because, of course, you just have tons of photos normally, baby photos, to add to an album, and this just gives you that extra space. We must have hundreds, literally hundreds of photos from when my daughter was born. Like, my husband would just sit there and just snap photo after photo after photo, and like she is in the same position, hasn't even moved, and they're all the same picture. So we just have tons of photos. And can you believe I still have not even done a baby album for her, even though I have all those photos. One day. It's on the list, right? The never-ending imaginary list of things to do. Okay, last flap, and then we're done, and we can add this to the front cover of the book. Okay, and there it is. And there's our pocket. So I'm going to go ahead and add my glue all around the pocket area. And then I'm going to stick it down. And I'm going to stay a good amount away from the fold of the album. I didn't really measure. I'm just eyeballing it. Whoops. So I don't know if it's easier to add the pocket before and then add the waterfall pieces or what. I'm just going to let this sit before I really mess with it at all. So the only other thing I want to let you know is that like here I went ahead and added the closure. I don't know if I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to round my little corners real quick because I want to stay consistent in doing that. And so I already have my magnet here and then my magnet on the flap, and it just keeps it nice and tidy. So you could do that piece measures 2.5 inches by 5 3/4 inches, and I scored on the 5 3/4 inch side at 1/2 inch. So all I did is fold on the score line, and I just stuck it. I added my glue on this side, and I stuck it in here, and then there it is. And I just put my magnet on the other side. So super easy. I'm not sure if I'm going to use ribbon yet or the magnet. I already did this closure here, but I can still take that off. So anyway, there are the front and back covers. You should have nice pockets on both sides. And then the 4 pages. So it's only got, I think I did a 2 3/4 inch spine. I was going to do 2.5, but I just wanted to give it an extra, where'd my pencil go? 1/4 inch, just because I knew I was going to have those large waterfalls. 2 3/4. I gotta write that down. on the front and back cover. So I want to just give the book enough room to accommodate for the waterfalls and the pages as well. Even though it's only a 4-page album, of course you could add 2 more pages if you want to, if you just like to have 6 pages. But this ends up being quite a large album and will hold a ton of photos for you without adding any more pages, and it still keeps it at a nice manageable size. So I'm going to cover this in my pattern paper, and then I will come back and share the final Graphic 45 Master Detective album with you guys. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.